Nat a Chance is the sixth middle grade graphic novel to feature the character Natalie. Natalie is a middle grade student who doubts herself, but with the help of friends, overcomes her fears, learns to believe in herself, and finds ways to succeed. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book, and I'll talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. Maria Scrivan is a New York Times best-selling author and award-winning cartoonist. In addition to her best-selling graphic novels, her syndicated comic Half Full appeared in newspapers nationwide for a decade. She joins us to talk about Nat a Chance. Maria, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, this is the sixth book to feature the character Natalie. So take us back to the beginning. What is the origin story for Natalie?
So Natalie, also known as Nat, is based on my childhood self and really started from me writing vignettes of things that happened in middle school. And I did it really as a form of self-healing, to go back and look at these stories through the lens of humor. And there's so much good material that at the time was not funny at all. And what's interesting about Natalie, although she was based on my childhood self, as a character, she has taken on a life of her own. And I have learned so much from her.
So in each of these books, do you sort of explore a different episode in her/your life and what people can learn from it?
I do. So in the first book, it was a lot about friendship. So the origin story in Nat Enough, Natalie has a best friend from second grade through sixth grade. When they get to middle school, that friend no longer wants to be friends with her anymore. And this is about Natalie kind of blaming herself only to realize that it wasn't about her. And friendships change, and that's really an evergreen thing that still happens. And although maybe I was passing notes and now kids are passing texts, it's that same type of feeling like you're not enough or feeling like you don't fit in. And this is Natalie's exploration of really finding out who she is and surrounding herself with people that lift her up instead of put her down. And so through each book in the series, I explore different themes. So the first book is self-worth, then self-love, moving through fear, moving through doubt, independence, and now self-belief.
And do you think that these things that you went through, the things that Nat go through, are universal and that's why kids identify with her?
Absolutely. And I love the quote, the most personal is the most universal. And that's really true. And I find that both in my books and in my comic, that stuff that I am sure I am the only person dealing with resonates with other people. Like, oh yeah, absolutely. And what's so interesting about that, I think kids especially feel so alone in their feelings. And it means a lot for them to see their own experiences reflected on the page. It makes them feel a lot less alone.
So tell us about this sixth book. What's the plot, the story that people will find here?
So Nat a Chance is about Natalie, who is sure she is not an athlete. She's always tripping and falling down. She gets picked last for gym. She is just a complete disaster when it comes to any sport. This is very much based on my own real life experience. So Natalie sort of gets tangled up into doing a triathlon with her best friend. And now she is being pushed out of her comfort zone, but out of her belief zone as well. So this book is about the stories we tell ourselves repeatedly for our entire lives sometimes, and what happens when we challenge these false beliefs. So the idea that she wasn't an athlete may not even be true. So she gets an opportunity to challenge that belief. And that can be, I can't sing, I'm bad at math. These stories that we tend to tell ourselves. And I know it's something that I've done in my own life. And I also had the same experience as Natalie. I was sure I wasn't an athlete. I quit the soccer team because I didn't want to run the mile warm up. And for me, it was when I got to college and ended up getting roped into joining the rowing team with some friends, which set off a lifelong love of athletics. So I really wanted to focus this idea on challenging the false beliefs of things that we tell ourselves.
Now, this is a middle grade graphic novel. So for what age range would you recommend the book?
It's actually slated for ages 8 to 12. So 8 is really, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And middle grade can go 7th, 8th, 9th. So the range of the book is 8 to 12, but readers as young as 7 have been reading it as well. So there's a pretty big range on the book.
And as you pointed out, in different books, you have different themes, but there are multiple themes in this book as well. including we see instances of bullying.
Yes.
There's an emphasis on climate change.
Yeah.
And of course, her overcoming her fear and doubts and figuring out with the help of her friends, she really can succeed at things she thought were impossible.
Exactly. And I like that idea of exploring what is possible. And there's a big theme of moving past the impossible. At the end of every book, I have a mini comic which summarizes the book. And that's why I chose Alice in Wonderland, because I love that quote of doing 5 impossible things before breakfast. So I wanted to echo that theme of challenging the seemingly impossible.
Well, there's a lot of fun things in your book. I mean, starting from this book series, starting from your creative way of using the word Nat and her nickname in the different titles. So you have all sorts of just sort of little fun, punny titles for your series.
Yeah, and that was this magical thing that happens in sketchbooks sometimes, and I've verified this with other cartoonists, 2 seemingly random thoughts sitting next to each other on a page. I think it sort of marinates when the sketchbook's closed and magically forms the idea. So I had the name Natalie, I had Nat, and then I had Not Enough, and I was staring at these words together, and I was like, oh, Nat Enough. And there are so many words and phrases that start with not. So it's kind of endless, actually. And it works really well. And there's a lot of humor in the series, which is a big part of it. So I investigate deep, heavy feelings, but through the lens of humor. So it diffuses some of these strong emotions that I was going through and that kids go through as well.
And you also have a cat and dog that kind of have their own little mini-series going throughout the book.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about them.
So the beginning of every chapter begins with Cat and Treat. Treat is based on my dog, Toby, who will not come when I call his name ever. So I always jokingly, I have to say I have a treat. So I always jokingly said I should have named him Treat. So I did in the series. Cat was based on a cat that I had who's no longer alive. I've had cats my entire life. They never come when I call them. So that's why I just named Cat. And their dynamic was very much the dynamic of my dog and cat. But what's fun is every chapter opens with a panel comic. And I think I've done 60 now so far throughout the series. And then they have sort of interludes through the book. So it's fun to sort of echo the story through those characters as well.
I'm talking with Maria Scrivan about Nat a Chance, and our conversation will continue. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. And thank you. Now, doing panel comics is something you have a lot of experience with.
Yes.
So this Half Full series, tell us a bit about it.
So Half Full was syndicated in newspapers for a decade, and now I do it online only 3 days a week as I'm expanding my book series. And what I love about having a daily deadline was it absolutely taught me how to look at life through the lens of humor. And even things that were seemingly frustrating, annoying, all that is material. And as I said with Nat, it may not feel that way at the time, but at any given moment, it gives me an opportunity to look for what's funny in that opportunity, in that moment. And what I also love about it is with that daily deadline, I never had wasted time. I started to just bring a sketchbook with me. So if I was waiting for a friend at a coffee shop, sitting in a waiting room at the DMV, there was always an opportunity to write and sketch. And I kept that with me. So I'm never really waiting. I'm always using time to be creative. So airplanes, I get so much work done. I love it. So it taught me a lot.
Now, Natalie is a cartoonist as well.
Yes.
Is this something that you had an interest in as a young person as well?
I've always wanted to be a cartoonist, and I took a very windy path to do what I'm doing now. And it's interesting, in the first book, in Nat Enough, Natalie enters a book contest and wins the contest, goes to the Capitol. I live in Connecticut, so she goes to the Connecticut Capitol. And that was a story that happened to me as well. So that was probably the point where I got really interested in writing books as well. But for as long as I could draw, I've always been creating characters, creating stories. I used to pass notes to friends in high school with myself as a cartoon character. Anytime there was a creative assignment in school, I was drawing a comic. It's something that I've always loved to do. And I realize I'm a visual learner and a visual communicator. So this is how I communicate best.
In many graphic novels, there's an author and an illustrator.
Yes.
But because you're a cartoonist, you get to do both. Do you think that gives you a creative advantage?
I don't know that it's an advantage, but I know that for me, that even when I start out with a book, I sketch out words and pictures all together. Very rough in the first draft. And on one book, I tried writing a script, but it didn't work for me because I need both. I need everything that I can, all the tools. And what I love about graphic novels, there are so many layers of depth. You get to see not only the expression of the protagonist, but every other person in the scene. You can use clothing, color, body language. There's so many tools you get to use. So I love having that full giant toolkit for myself.
What advice would you have for an aspiring cartoonist? I mean, you've been at this basically ever since you were a kid. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give?
So the most important things to me are to read a lot, write a lot, and draw a lot. And probably more important than any of that is to have fun. Because when you're having fun and enjoying yourself with what you do, that energy just comes through in your work. And I think that's really important. And also, there are no mistakes in art. Every drawing leads to the next drawing. Every bit of writing leads to the next writing. And I've got this great picture that I show in school talks of just a trash can overflowed with crumpled paper. And I said, this is my writing process, because there are so many revisions. There are so many ways I go back and keep refining. And for me, it's really an adventure. I never know what's going to show up on the page. And I love that more than anything.
And having fun is one of the themes that you push in the book. You know, your characters say, let's have fun. And it's a way of sort of overcoming that fear and not putting too high of expectations on yourself. But as long as you're enjoying it, it's okay, whether you come in first in that competition or come in last, as long as you enjoyed it.
Exactly. And that's a really big point in that book in particular, that it's really the journey, it's the process, and you're doing something new, you're surrounded with friends. The outcome doesn't really matter at all.
What is it you like about writing for this age group?
It really feels like a letter to myself, and most of what I'm writing is a reminder. So I feel like I'm writing a reminder to myself that there are so many possibilities, that nothing's impossible, and it really helps me process. And what I love for feedback, I do a lot of school visits, and I get a lot of letters from kids, and finding out that Nat helped them through their anxiety or helped them move through things or just made them laugh means the world to me.
As we mentioned, this is the 6th book to feature Natalie. How has Natalie changed over the course of those books?
I've loved seeing Natalie's evolution, and she's changed both in look. So the drawings themselves have become so refined just from drawing her over and over again. And in character, she's learned so much about herself, and she's gained so much more confidence and moved past that sort of, there's a point in time where it seems that all of a sudden we feel this judgment, especially around that age. We feel like we have to fit in and are so worried about what other people think. And I really see her moving out of that space and be just standing on her own 2 feet and doing what's right for her, which is really fun to watch.
There's a question that I often ask writers of fiction, and it's this. If you could spend a day in real life with one of the characters from your book, who would it be and why?
I have to say Flo, because Flo cracks me up. She's the girl with her hair kind of hanging over her eyes, and she cracks me up. I never know what she's going to say or do. She's got this incredible optimism in life, which I wish I had more of on a consistent basis. So I would love to spend a day with Flo because she's just like pure energy. She'd be really fun.
Well, this is the 6th book. I'm assuming there's a 7th book in the works. Can you give us any hint about what we'll see next?
I can't give any hints just yet, but I can say I have many more Nat stories to tell.
This middle grade graphic novel is Nat a Chance by Maria Scrivan. Maria, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you. This has been really fun.
If you'd like to purchase Nat a Chance, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. Well, thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.